here is Holbein's Ambassadors, which has the skull, which viewed from one angle you can see is a skull. So this was something that was named in the script. And I suppose the colours of that painting then dictated the colours of the library itself. And Craig, the director, didn't want it to be a dark, brown, fusty library, and we kind of wanted this idea that it would be a garden room library, hence the trellis work that you can see, a sort of jungly garden room, which is why we've got the animals' heads. And this isn't properly dressed. There's usually this big bear skin on the ground that's very much part of the story itself. Funnily enough, I sort of had the idea of the trellis work, and then I started looking at designers of the period. And there's a designer of the period called Elise de Wolfe. She used to have these mad parties in the sort of 20s and 30s. And she had a whole pavilion that was trellis like this. So in fact the element that we did copy from her is the top bit. Can you see up at the top that little sort of fleur-de-lis pattern? That's very much a direct reference from Elise de Wolfe. So you're not seeing it in the best light, but in the script Sarah had a clock in the hallway. And because we had to have, again, this Gertler painting in the background in the hallway, which is the Gertler merry-go-round that was painted straight after the First World War, I had the idea that the horses on there I wanted to reflect somewhere else. So I decided we had this big space here that I needed to fill, so I thought, right, I'm going to do an Art Deco-y style, not a mural, sort of wall relief, and hence that's where the design came from. The horses on the Gertler, the idea of the sea and white horses, and the requirement to have this clock. And actually, if you look at the liners like the Queen Mary, there were lots of things like this. And if you have a look, obviously these are the white horses from the sea, but this is the island. This is Soldier Island in the background. Charlie, come here. So this is the prop room. This is our prop store, and actually what we've done on this production is we've bought an awful lot of stuff. Charlie here, who's the set decorator, has gone to all the markets, Newark, Kempton, Ardingly, and we've actually bought stuff and adapted it and changed it, because what we didn't want was for this to look like any other production. We wanted to give it its own individual slant. And also because we were in the house for 4 weeks, it was actually cheaper for us to buy the items and adapt them. So here, for instance, is an armchair. This was very sort of popular in the period to tassel and tuft things. These are the initial mood boards for the project. So sort of right at the beginning, I sort of had an idea of where I wanted to go with Craig. So this section is my mood boards. Sort of ideas about the house, the white room. Even right at the beginning, I knew I wanted to paint a room, for instance. The downstairs bit, very dark and gloomy, and then the sort of mood and flashbacks and the colour palette. And this was Craig, the director's mood boards, which tally very closely. So basically, obviously we were presented with the poem itself, but our graphics designer worked very hard on it, looking at illustrations of the period, looking at Rex Whistler, who was a very famous artist and illustrator of the period. And she very cleverly designed this surround, which actually alludes to the poem. So there's the red herring, there's the bees, there's lots of symbolism, the serpent, you know, and then it also, she's integrated bits to do with our characters like Lombard and Bloor. So these are Lombard spears from Africa. The figurines, this is a very important part of the story because, as you know, as a person gets killed, a figure disappears. So these were very much designed with the sculptors of the period in mind. So this is, as I said, Matisse or Bresca. Each one has been individually sculpted. and cast in resin to look like jade. But they are obviously very precious objects. They're like little chess figures, but also they all slot together from a solid block in the middle. And here's the floating sun and moon. But if you see, each one has a different character. So we actually briefed the sculptor to say, you know, Marsden is vanity, Wargrave is judgmental, and she's echoed that within the sculptures.